Curtis Calhoun with LowKick MMA, and today I'm joined by Liz Carmouche. Liz, how's it going?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing great. Let's begin by talking about your upcoming fight against Kana Watanabe at Bellator 261. What are your thoughts on her as an opponent, and how camp has been for you so far?
It's been a really short camp, so it's really just getting down and just nitty gritty. Thankfully, my one of my training partners, he had a fight shortly after mine. So when I came back from my fight Monday, I was right back into training, helping him get ready. So I was in shape and ready for this phone call. But she's a game opponent. It's somebody I'm looking forward to. It's a judokan. So whenever somebody is a black belt or they're an expert at some type of martial art, that for me is really exciting because it means I can challenge myself in a new area and try and exceed their abilities or match them and see where I'm at with them.
Absolutely. Obviously, this is a big fight, not only for you, but also for the division as well. Has this been communicated to you as a number one contender fight? And if so, how excited are you to get another shot at that belt?
No, it hasn't been not word yet from Bellator and when I'll have the opportunity for a contender spot. But I certainly hope that it makes sense with this fight to be able to have that be the next shot. So I'm really hoping to put on a great show and I'll get that phone call either that night or following back the next week that I'll be fighting for the belt.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the matchup in the title fight between Velasquez and Kielholtz?
I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be a really great fight. And it's one that I'm really excited. I'm going to tune in to watch, not just the next contender, but also just as a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the biggest differences you've noticed during your time in Bellator as opposed to your time in the UFC and other promotions too? Have fighters been treated any differently? What are some of the similarities and differences there?
Some of the things are really hard to gauge just because when I came into Bellator was during COVID and
Right.
having not had that experience with the other organizations, there's some comparisons that really just can't be made because we've never experienced anything like this. But one thing that I really appreciate about Bellator is things like with my other fights is we'd heard word that the opponents dropped out and Bellator went above and beyond to make sure that they had opponents secured for me. I can't say that would have ever happened in any organization. In the past, if somebody dropped out, they're like, "Hey, sorry, you're out of luck." And I'm like, "Oh, great! So I'm just gonna sit on the shelf for another 9 months to a
Right.
year." And Bellator, when they said that we're going to try and get you 2 to 3 fights a year, they've held by that. And I really can't speak to other organizations doing the same thing. So I'm really grateful for that. Everybody's super personable. They always seem to respect the fighters and be all about taking care of them. It's a small organization. I recognize the same faces every time I come in, as opposed to being like, "Hey, I've never met you.
Yeah.
Wow, this is another new face. What's going on here?" So it's
Right.
been really cool just to know the same people and get to really have that experience of growing bonds with those relationships.
Absolutely. And also, you've had a long, successful career in MMA for about 11 years now. What's it like to be able to compete still at a high level at this later stage in your career?
I'm really grateful for it. I do know that there are other fighters that have fallen off where you just see they seem to decline or they say stagnant and they're the same fighter their entire career. And I've really tried to make leaps and bounds and try to constantly evolve and just keep growing with the game. And when you watch these young women that are able to do this sport from being 4 years old, so when they sprout out and go pro at 18, they've been doing it longer than I have.
Right.
So I really have to, it keeps me on my game and keeps me constantly challenging myself. That's really exciting.
How excited are you to fight in front of a crowd again?
I actually like the COVID fights. I like that little bubble and just being able to sit in my room. I'm a hermit, and I was already having nothing to do with COVID, a big germaphobe. So it's like, this is great. Nobody's touching me. Nobody's sneezing on me. No sweaty armpits. This is amazing. I just go to and from my fight. And now I'm like, oh, there's going to be people again. Oh, no.
Yeah.
So, but I also love the energy of the crowds and being able to see those smiling faces and the feedback from them. That doesn't compare when you just have an empty room and it's just you in the other corners.
What was the experience like fighting in an empty arena? Was it more like an official sparring session in a way? I've heard that comparison made a lot.
No, I think just because for myself, I'm really good at being able to get the tunnel vision. The weirdest part for me is that walkout. For me, that
Yeah.
walk kind of that energy is it's tangible. You can feel it when you walk out. And so that's the biggest thing is you go out and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm still fighting, but there's something totally missing here. And
Right.
so it's like weird. And same thing, you get out of your fight and you're all excited and you're looking around like, oh, it's just okay, cool. We're just walking out. So both the entry and the exit are really the most notable differences for me about having a crowd. and not having a crowd. But when I'm actually in the cage, it's no different for me. It's still the same thing. And I'm still hyper focused on what it is I'm trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Before we go, I got to get some fight predictions from you. What are your thoughts on the upcoming trilogy between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier?
I think that Poirier is up and coming, and he's doing a lot of grounds and constantly evolving. And one thing I've seen on McGregor is it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of change and growth from him. So I think that Poirier is going to come out there and he's going to do work. And I'm really hoping he comes out with the win, just because I keep seeing his evolution of what he's doing. And to me, a fighter that's evolving and trying to adapt and grow in every way that they can is, to me, a fighter I want to look out for and see what they can achieve.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the upcoming MMA versus boxing match between Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul?
It's weird. I felt like McGregor kind of opened up a can of worms in terms of that hybrid coming in between those.
Yeah.
And it's a real world to me, because I know when I see boxers get in there, with the exception of like Clarissa Shields, they usually don't adapt well to MMA. And in boxing, it's still the same thing. I see some like stance changes, or they want to throw a Superman punch. You see the hesitation of wanting to kick and not being able to. But ultimately, when you go to somebody's specialty and you try and compete with them, they succeed because that's what they've been doing and that's what they focus on. So I think it always comes down to the boxer in the end.
Absolutely. Before we wrap things up here, I'll give you the final word, shout out any sponsors you may have, and let fans know where we can find you on social media.
Absolutely. So I just want to do a big shout out to my training partner, Enrique Marte. He's been a huge help in these last few camps, and just letting me abuse him to death and try out every little thing that I possibly can, as well as like helping me out with some other things outside, just as a family friend. And a special shout out to my management, Janice Sports, and to my CBD company, Enjoyable CBD. And you can find me on almost all of my social media as I am Gorilla or Liz Carmouche Official.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time again. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.